Hello there, I am Rafael de Furia, back at it again on another Friday night. And tonight, I wanted to continue the series that I started a while back about the costs of living in Italy, because there's a lot to say and I wanted to break it up a bit rather than doing maybe 1 3-hour long video. Last time we spoke a bit about the going out here in Italy and kind of like going for pizza and getting out for what that can cost. This time I wanted to focus on internet and phone costs, mobile phone, mobile internet, and home phone costs, just because I think it is a very important subject to talk about if you are seriously thinking about moving to Italy, because in this age where the internet is not only a way that we can communicate with others, it can also be very necessary for shopping, for keeping in contact with family on the other side of the world, or even for entertainment. So I wanted to tackle this subject first because I know mobile phone usage and mobile internet usage is something that is very necessary also to a lot of people who are working remotely, and especially considering the past year, I think that a lot of individuals who are thinking about moving to Italy do have a concern and are wondering about what does the internet situation look like out here in Italy. But before we get too much deeper into this video, be sure that you are subscribed with the notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like and share it with your friends, that would also be so very greatly appreciated, because it really does help out the channel. And of course, a huge thank you to those of you who help make these videos possible on a monthly basis through patreon.com/RafaelDeFuria or rafaeldefuria.com/Patreon. Really, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. But anyway, I wanted to also just preface this video by saying I think that there is a lot of background information that is worthwhile covering before we get into some of the costs that you may see here in Italy. Because when you are searching for the best price on some of these services, sometimes if you combine and weave in and out of services, you might actually be able to get a better deal. We'll get into that later in the video. But anyway, let's just get started with some of the background information. And later in the video, I will talk a little bit more about the specific offers that are available right now as of the recording of this video. In my experience, the costs here can definitely be a lot less than what you might find in the United States. Maybe I know more people with fiber to the house in the United States than I know in Italy. And so maybe some of the costs or not costs, but some of the speeds and quality of service might be a little bit better. Definitely, I have to say customer service is something that America excels in. I'm not going to say Italian customer service is bad, but I can't say that I've had too many positive experiences thus far. I'm definitely generalizing here, but the good experiences have been very good, but the negative experiences have unfortunately cast a shadow on the rest. And let's start out with mobile internet and mobile phone service. This is something that you can find a lot of different kinds of deals for, and they can start at around, say, €4, €5, and range all the way up to 30, 40, 50, 60. Although that 50, 60 range is much less common to find. More so if you have, like, you need a lot of international minutes, and that would be maybe more leaning in the direction of one mobile company. But generally speaking, here in Italy, you have 3 main carriers. You have Vodafone, WindTre, and TIM. It used to be 4 major carriers, but Wind and Tre joined forces, and so now they actually have one of the largest, or actually the largest network, if I'm not mistaken, here in Italy. But Vodafone is supposed to have one of the fastest networks here in Italy. And they're the network so far that seems to be a little bit more 5G focused, but WindTre also does have a little bit of a push going for this, and they have been advertising these services. However, at the time of recording this video, I can say there are very few places that seem to actually have 5G service in use, even though it is supposed to be technically rolled out a little bit. But again, it's very limited. And when we're talking about mobile phone and mobile internet, this kind of divides into 2 separate camps, so to speak. You have the contracts where you pay monthly, and then you have prepaid services where you also paid monthly. And it's not like pay as you go as you might see in some other countries. Although there is something along the lines of pay as you go that I have seen here in Italy, but the upkeep is generally a little bit more pricey, and I would say maybe not as worthwhile, at least from what I've seen, the few plans that I have seen that exist along these lines. But generally speaking, when we're talking about a prepaid plan here in Italy, we are talking about something that resembles a monthly contract, but rather than having a service where you have to keep it for, say, a year and a half, or 2 years, what will be the case is that you have to just make sure that the balance in your account is topped up at the end of every month, or rather, I should say, for the beginning of the next new month, so that when they take the money from your balance, there's actually something there. So sometimes people will fill a couple months in advance, but it just depends on what's comfortable for you, because sometimes what somebody might do, if they're maybe on the lower end of the earning spectrum, so to speak, then they might only fill up 1 month at a time. And the thing is also, when you're taking into account a regular contract, that will often be on the short end that I've seen a year. I have seen a 1.5-year contract, but that was only once, and I don't think that's common at all. But I've seen 1 year and 2 year contracts more commonly. I've had both. I got through a 2-year contract, and at the end of that 2-year contract, I can say I was already very much itching to get rid of it by the time that was done, because there were so many more new offers. So the contract that I have now is actually a 1-year contract, and it's probably not too far off from being up. But I don't think I'm going to be leaving this deal that I have right now, because like I was saying before, these prices can be a lot cheaper here in Italy, but I'll get into that in a second. But one of the major differences between actually these two areas of prepaid and regular contract is that for the regular contract, you'll need to set up direct debits, at least in the majority cases that I've seen. I don't know if I've ever seen a normal term contract or a contract period that does not involve direct debit. And having direct debit does involve having an Italian bank account. And just like for phone plans and internet, home internet, these types of things, it's not a bad idea to shop around a little bit for the different banks that are around and the different companies that are around, because there are a lot of offers and some offer better services than others. But for having the contract, you need to not only have a bank account, but it needs to be a conto corrente, like a checking account, so to speak. Even though checks aren't really a thing that are used here so much, that was actually something that when I've heard it from Americans that are living in the States, I've been abroad so long now, not in Italy the whole time, but when I hear about Americans still using checks, it's something that it always makes me take a step back. It's like, oh, you guys still use checks? Like I didn't realize that. It was just because it's been so long. But here, everything, even in between people, you'll send a bank transfer, a wire transfer. But there are different types of accounts here in Italy that do resemble something that functions very similarly to one of these checking accounts here, like for example N26 or some of the PostePay accounts, some of the different types of accounts that they offer. And then there's also Revolut, I think, and I don't know if that one's Italian, but there's a few different companies that offer these online banking options that you can sign up for. But in Italy, it functions more like a prepaid debit card to an extent. You'll often actually have an IBAN number, a European banking number. But the thing is, it won't function in the same way, that they won't be able to take that direct debit. And so this can create actually a big problem when you're trying to set up monthly payments for internet or for mobile devices. Also, one of the other differences between these two camps is that the contracts will generally have a lower monthly fee, and that's because you're actually agreeing to be with that company for a while and remain a customer of theirs. However, there are some prepaid plans that are actually very competitive in cost. For example, Iliad and Mobile. Don't worry, I'm getting to the prices in a second, but I feel as though some of this information, this background information, is very relevant and necessary to have for when you're shopping around, because it can help you to find the best prices available. So getting back to what I was saying, if you have one of these prepaid services when you first arrive in Italy, or even if you've been here for a while, I think it's actually not such a horrible idea, because that can give you a bit of flexibility. The network connections aren't always the best because they are virtual operators who buy minutes and data packages from some of the major companies, like PosteMobile, if I'm not mistaken, buys from Vodafone, and they use their towers, and Iliad uses the WindTre towers. But the thing is, I have noticed personally from having Iliad in the past that the speed can be a little bit lower than what other people experience on the same tower or on the same system that have a Wind SIM instead of an Iliad SIM. But the benefit of having an Iliad SIM, for example, is that at the time of this recording, they may change something in the future, but they've seemed to continue on with the same idea behind what they do. And so what I'm talking about here is that this cell phone company, or the mobile provider in particular, this one, Iliad, will actually give you a prepaid plan that you can cancel at any time. But the really nice benefit to that company is that if you are an American, for example, and this goes for a number of other countries, you'll have to check on their website if this is something that you're looking into. But at the time of this recording, they do have a plan that includes, I think it's 50 gigabytes, unlimited minutes in Italy, and also unlimited calls to the United States, which is huge, especially if you're here. I mean, nowadays, maybe it makes a little bit less of a difference with applications like WhatsApp and all these other applications out there, Zoom, Skype, whatever you use. But it can be nice to have a backup of an actual phone number instead of relying on a data connection. One of the other benefits, and I would say this is kind of like maybe a little bit of a hidden benefit, is that by having an Iliad SIM, for example, and this is not sponsored, this is just something that I would recommend to some people to consider doing. Not necessarily that I think you should do it, but it's worth looking into this. If you have an Iliad SIM or even PosteMobile or one of the other virtual operators, you can sometimes find really good deals from one of the major carriers if you switch your number over to them instead. And sometimes I've seen deals that, like from Wind, for example, $5.99 or $6.99 or $7.99, basically the same price as Iliad, if you switch over to their network. And it depends on whether you have a prepaid plan or a contract. And the difference between a prepaid bill and a contract sometimes can be within a couple euros of each other. Sometimes it can be a little bit more than that. And I would say it might be worth starting out with one of those companies because it gives you a way into the one of the more major carriers. This is something that definitely could change in the future. But for the past little while now, I've definitely been seeing these offers available. And as somebody who uses data more than minutes or even minutes abroad, taking one of these prepaid plans and switching over to a major carrier is something that I would consider to do. Because if you go directly to one of the major three carriers here in Italy, sometimes the prices can be a bit higher. For example, I was seeing plans that if you switched over to Wind, for example, $5.99, $6.99, something like this. But if you were starting just a new contract with a new number just from the get-go, then that same type of plan would cost you anywhere from, say, $8.99 to $14.99, depending on what options were available, because these deals are constantly changing out. Sometimes they change out after a week, sometimes after a few months. Like I was saying before, it is worthwhile to be able to shop around and find the deal that best suits your needs. I know that after my first contract here in Italy was up, I spent a while looking for the right contract before I finally found one that was the right deal for me. And it just so happens that after my first contract here in Italy, I did switch over to Iliad. And then knowing that I had this Iliad plan and seeing one of these deals that was available from one of the major companies here in Italy, then I hopped on that immediately when I saw that. But I would definitely say, I don't know if I mentioned this in this video already. I know I have in a previous video. Don't consider TIM. At least that's my opinion. I know I could never consider TIM. I've had a horrible experience with them in the past, and not only the actual cellular service, but just dealing with the company, fees on top of fees. I'm not even going to go into it in this video, but anyway, I could never consider to have a mobile plan with that company here. I know there are people who do like their services, but that is a company that I would say does not have the not your average Globetrotter seal of approval at all. No way, no how. But at the time of recording this video, the average cellular phone plan I've seen go from, say, about $4.99 to about $15.99. This seems to be the kind of normal range if we're talking about the normal kind of cost end of the spectrum. But if we're talking about Vodafone, for example, again, their prices can be a bit higher. I know that when I last looked at a plan there, it was way more expensive than I would have ever considered. I don't remember exactly how many gigabytes, but it was probably around 50 gigabytes per month plus maybe 500 minutes or something like this, and maybe 200 SMS. That came out to be like 20 something a month. And I was just like, no, there's other plans out there that cost a lot less. No way I'm even going to consider paying that much, especially with that Iliad SIM that I was able to transfer over to another company and get a really great deal. Moving in the direction of home internet and computer internet, let's first talk about having a Wi-Fi hotspot, some sort of mobile device that you can just tether through, whether it's your cell phone or a little pocket Wi-Fi, whatever it is, or a tablet, whatever you have. It is not a bad idea in Italy if you work from home to have one of these as a backup. They can start out around $8.99 to $12.99 for a 100 gigabyte package or a 50 gigabyte package. It just depends on the offer that's available at the time. The reason why I say this is because personally, I can say I've been in a number of situations where the internet, the network, the local network has gone down, and not just on one network. It's been on multiple networks, and I've had this happen in a number of cities around the country. So I think it's a very good idea if you can have this backup. And if you happen to get one of these data-only SIM cards, say from Wind, for example, and you also have a cell phone, or at least a cell phone plan from Wind, then what you can do is you can share the data from the data-only SIM card to your mobile phone plan. And so this could let you have the possibility of maybe having way too many gigabytes that you will never know what to do with, or potentially having just a voice-only SIM card and using your data, your pocket Wi-Fi SIM data also on your phone, but also having that same data package available to you on your pocket Wi-Fi tablet or whatever you may have. But getting into home internet lines, every once in a while, there is a package that does pop up that has one of these data-only SIM cards that's actually included in the deal. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Not common to see at all. So I wouldn't necessarily hold out for it, but keep an eye open for it. But when we're talking about having a home internet plan here in Italy, you will find some places that have fiber internet, generally fiber to the cabinet. Very few places that I've been to where I can say I've seen fiber to the house. But then if you get a little bit further out, maybe a DSL line, a DSL modem might be a possibility for you. But anyway, this is not so much the idea of this video to focus on this. And a lot of the home internet deals do include a phone line. Some of them even you can get packaged with television, or at least a trial for Netflix or a trial for Amazon Prime. It depends on the offer again that's going on at the time. There are always these kinds of specials that are being offered. You just have to keep an eye out for them. But generally speaking, at least within, say, the last year or so, if we're talking about a normal residential internet line, I've seen them going from, say, about $19.95 to about $29.95. A lot of them do float around, say, $24. But this is kind of the general price range that I've been seeing. If you're needing a business internet line, then this is a different sort of situation. I'm focusing on more residential, because even for somebody who works from home, having a normal individual private line can be enough for your needs, especially if you're single and living alone, or even if you're single but maybe have a roommate or two, or you live with your partner. But going back to the inclusion of the phone line, sometimes these phone lines will have free minutes for incoming calls, but you might have to pay for the outgoing calls. But in other cases, you might actually get a deal that would include unlimited international minutes to at least some landlines in some countries. For example, I at one point did have an internet package when I was living in Merano that included unlimited calls to the United States, and that actually was kind of nice to have. But the problem was that if my internet went down, my phone also went down. So it was a VoIP service or SIP service of some sort. So that was a little bit annoying, but this is something that is available that you do find. But now I have an internet line and I don't even bother to use the function of the landline because I would have to pay for outgoing calls, and I don't need my home phone ringing off the hook day and night. I don't need that. My phone already buzzes enough as it is. But there are those times, like I was saying before, that you can even find a home internet package that will include a data-only SIM card. And some of the pocket Wi-Fis you can get for like 30 euros. And I think it is worth to have, even if you have to pay it monthly, if you are working from home, just as a little insurance policy. Now, let's get into some more specific costs of what the internet situation and mobile phone internet situation can look like on a monthly basis here. We will be talking about some specific numbers here. And let's just say that the numbers that you may hear me talking about and the packages you might hear about in this video may not exist at a later date, and very likely will change, at least on some level, because even, for example, you'll see some of the 5G packages that are available. Some companies offer 5G, some other companies don't offer 5G, or some offer something that lets you get at the front of the line for 5G. But I think it's also worth going over these numbers as they are today, because they are a pretty decent representation of what these numbers look like. However, what I will say is that the home internet options are probably at the highest that I've seen them in maybe a year or two, but you definitely can find lower costs than the ones I'm going to be talking about specifically today. And so let's start with home and phone internet. And the current prices that I saw from WindTre, they are offering a fiber line up to 1 gigabit with a modem included, with also 12 months of Amazon Prime included. Not half bad if you ask me, because you get Prime Video, Prime, Amazon Prime just in general, so you get the faster shipping. And so that comes to $28.98 per month. And this also, as far as I'm aware, includes unlimited minutes at home. But then Fastweb, for the time being, actually has an offer for $29.95 for a line that would be up to 2.5 gigabits per second. But keep in mind, when I'm saying here about 2.5 gigabits per second, this is assuming you have a fiber to the house line and not fiber to the cabinet or some sort of mixed line or whatever it may be. So your mileage will definitely vary. And like I was mentioning earlier in the video, a lot of places don't necessarily have fiber to the house, but it is something that is being rolled out to more and more parts of Italy and even more and more parts of cities, because you might find in one city on one street they have fiber to the house and the other one fiber to the cabinet, or maybe you'll have in the city where I live fiber to the cabinet, and then a couple doors down you might only be able to get DSL or something kind of along the lines of something mixed, not quite fiber to the cabinet, but anyway, not important here. But also, I want to get back to Fastweb in just a second, because they do have another offer that's somewhat comparable to something that Vodafone has. But first, when it comes to Vodafone, they have a line that's up to 1 gigabit per second at $33.90, which seems to also include calls and a data SIM card of 150 gigabytes. So that is actually pretty significant, especially if the line does go down. Then you do have that extra SIM card that you can pop into a pocket Wi-Fi or whatever, giving you the option that if you need to have even a wireless connection and you want to go to a cafe for something, which isn't as common here as maybe you might see like back in the States, people working from Starbucks and so on, but it gives you options. But the really interesting about this offer, and this is something that I've never seen this specifically before, but in some of these offers that you'll find from these various internet service providers, they will sometimes include like a bonus of something. Usually it's something like Amazon Prime, or what's it called, DAZN, D-A-Z-N, an online sports streaming service for, I think it's mostly soccer or football, depending on where you're from. It's a service I can say I've definitely never used as somebody who's not so much into sports. But this is something that can come into play, or even other Italian streaming services kind of along the lines of Netflix. And sometimes you'll even see Netflix included maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year, depending on what's available. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, the offers are always changing and you have to keep an eye open. But anyway, from Vodafone, if you want both home internet and mobile phone service, you can package them together, at least for the time being. And the plan that I saw included home internet plus a unlimited data, SMS, and national calls SIM card for a mobile phone for $39.90, and actually with all of that, having home internet plus phone service with unlimited data and unlimited everything, that's something that I would very seriously consider if I weren't already in a contract. For somebody coming to Italy for the first time, it could be worth looking into, because if you were to try to mix and match these services on your own, it's going to be difficult and you might have to wait around for them. But it's not the cheapest out there, but I would consider that one. But then getting back to Fastweb, they do also have a home and mobile plan where you can have for $25.95 plus $8.95 per month with unlimited calls at home, and then 50 gigs of data on your mobile with unlimited minutes, 100 SMS, and 5G included. So that's another plan that potentially could be interesting, but 50 gigabytes, I know for me personally isn't enough, but I know plenty of people that 50 gigabytes is way more than enough and way more than they would ever use in a month. But before we move on to mobile voice and data packages, let's talk about mobile data only packages. Some are SIM only, some you can get with a little pocket Wi-Fi, some you have to buy the pocket Wi-Fi separately. But these days, the pocket Wi-Fis that you can find aren't that crazy expensive, and I would say definitely worth looking into if you are working from home, like I have repeated a couple times in this video. But currently, Wind has an offer for 60 gigabytes at $8.99, 100 gigs at $12.99, and in some municipalities, they do offer unlimited data for $14.99. And then Mobile has 100 gigs for $12.99 and 200 for $19.99. Vodafone has 50 for $11.99 and 100 for $19.99 on a contract, but then 20 gigabytes for $9.99 and 50 gigabytes for $13.99 on their rechargeable prepaid plans. So that's something also to keep in mind, is that a lot of the prices that I am talking about in this video are contract prices. Sometimes to find some of these services can be a little bit difficult prepaid, especially for home internet lines. This is something you won't be able to find prepaid. Maybe if you have some sort of data only SIM package and have a router that is compatible with that data only SIM card, then I guess you could call that home internet. But that's a very different subject and something that you don't see necessarily advertised in that way, which is why I'm not going to get into that so much in this video. Even though there are a couple companies that do exist that do that in Italy, it's not something that I can say I would really look into unless there was absolutely no internet around and you're just out in the middle of the country someplace and only have cellular service, which does exist in this country. But then moving on to mobile services, which include both voice and data, you can find a Fastweb line for $8.95 per month with 5G and 50 gigs of data and unlimited minutes, kind of like their offer that I was mentioning before, where you could package it with one of their home internet deals and you would actually get it for a bit of a discount there. But then if we're talking about Vodafone, they actually have a bunch of unlimited plans that include unlimited minutes, SMS, and data, which is a pretty big deal, because I would say when I first got here, there really weren't any companies offering unlimited data, but now there are more and more options becoming available for people who do need unlimited data services. The nice thing also about these plans is that even though they are a little bit on the pricey side, they do also include minutes, unlimited minutes within the European Union for you to call from Italy. So if you need to make those calls, that is something that could be worthwhile having. But for $24.99, you get 1 gig and 200 minutes of European roaming on top of your regular Italian package. But then going up to $29.99, that bumps the extra roaming up to 2 gigs and 300 minutes. But then $39.99 bumps that roaming up to 5 gigs and 500 minutes while roaming in the European Union. But something really interesting from Vodafone is that they do have offers for people under certain age brackets. For example, for people that are 25 and under, for $9.99, you can get 40 gigabytes of data, unlimited minutes, unlimited data, and for some social and photo sharing, video sharing, and music streaming and messaging apps, you can actually get unlimited data. I've seen the apps change slightly over time, but usually it seems as though Instagram, Skype, or Google Maps, or even Spotify would be included for unlimited data usage. So even though you do have a 40 gig cap, if you mostly use certain applications, which a lot of young people do anyway, then you're not going to touch that data. But for people who are under 15, for the same price, you can get 20 gigabytes, 300 minutes to all phone lines in Italy. But for up to 2 Vodafone lines, say, for example, the parents of that child to up to 2 numbers, you can have unlimited calling. And then that comes along with 50 gigabytes and then unlimited data for usage with certain applications. But then getting over to a virtual operator like Iliad, they do have a plan currently available that has 5G included. But again, 5G is one of those things that right now at this point in time isn't really rolled out, but they have unlimited minutes and unlimited SMS here in Italy. But then as far as I'm aware, they also have unlimited minutes to a number of countries. And for example, the United States, I believe they have unlimited minutes to both landlines and cellular phones. But to a lot of countries, they only have unlimited minutes to landline. So that's something that if you are needing to make those international calls, that you just want to check on. And they do have something odd in their phrasing, in their contract, that you don't use it, that you use it within reason. And also, I think it can't be for work. So they're trying to make something that is reasonable within the usage of somebody who is just your average person who just needs a phone line and doesn't need a business line. Iliad wouldn't necessarily be the best choice for that. And I have heard of people who've had their phone lines canceled because they overused the minutes abroad and really ran things up. And this offer for $9.99 includes 70 gigs of data, but a more common offer that I've seen on their website, which I believe is $7.99 per month, is actually for 50 gigabytes of data, but with the same sorts of voice and SMS options available. So that's something where I would say, even if you end up not switching to one of the major companies, Iliad does offer really great prepaid services for pretty basic needs, for simple needs, for personal use. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, if you do have one of these virtual operators, that sometimes it opens you up to possible really good deals that are out there. I haven't found any of these deals with the major carriers where if you transfer your number to them, they will offer that, because they don't seem to usually list that online. That seems, in my experience, to be more of an in-store thing. But with PosteMobile, at this point in time, there, if you transfer from a number of different virtual operators, not all, just some of them, you can get 70 gigabytes and unlimited minutes and unlimited SMS in Italy for $5.99, or for $9.99, that data cap gets pushed up to 100 gigabytes. But the only downside to PosteMobile is that at this point in time, as far as I understand, they don't offer those same minutes to call abroad like Iliad offers. But if you're trying to buy a new number from them, the prices can get bumped up a little bit. And instead of paying $5.99 for 70 gigs plus voice and SMS, you'll pay $8.99 for 70 gigabytes plus the voice and SMS. So if you have to sign up with that new phone line and get a new phone number, then that's where the cost will go up just that little bit more. But then also switching back over to Wind, at the time of recording, they have plans that all include unlimited minutes and 200 SMS, but for $11.99, you get 20 gigabytes, $12.99, 30 gigabytes, $14.99, 50 gigabytes, and then for $16.99, you get 100 gigabytes plus what they call 5G priority pass and a dedicated assistance line and 50 minutes to call abroad. The 5G priority pass, that's something that is a term that I haven't found a really good definition for, but it seems like either you will be put at the front of the line for when 5G is available, or that this plan will include 5G in the future, but other plans may or may not. But then for $29.99, you can get unlimited data and 200 SMS along with that 5G priority pass with that dedicated assistance line. So when you go from $16.99, having 100 gigabytes plus the 5G and all of that extra stuff, that's a pretty decent deal. I wouldn't say that's horrible. A little bit on the high side. You can definitely find lower if you switch, say, from Iliad to Wind, for example, and you can get that deal that comes up every once in a while. But to have unlimited data for $29.99, I would say not bad at all, especially on a network that is that large. But anyway, we have covered a lot of ground here in Italy, all the way from how things work in the country to the prices that you can expect roughly for some of these services. And in a future video, we definitely will be getting back into the cost of living in Italy and talk a bit more about what you might be able to expect. And of course, as always, thank you all so much for joining me again on another Friday night. Of course, a huge thank you to those of you who've subscribed to this channel and who've been liking these videos and sharing them with your friends. And of course, an even bigger thank you to the people who are monthly patrons who help to make this content possible. Really thank you also very much. And of course, as always, I'm Rafael di Furia. Thank you so much for joining me on another Friday night. And of course, stay safe and stay healthy out there. And I'll see you all next time. Later.